All right, good afternoon and welcome to Seattle's Eastside Real Estate Podcast. I am Dan Edwards, your host, and I'm here to provide the inside scoop on living, working, and playing in Seattle's Eastside. It's Wednesday, November 29th, and I hope you've had your fill of turkey. I know I'm on about day 6 of leftovers, and I am loving them. I've done a couple of different things with it. I made like a teriyaki out of it. I've made curry. I just really kind of like used as many of the leftovers as I could to enjoy my turkey. I might even do another turkey in a couple of weeks just because I enjoyed how it turned out. You're watching our podcast. Feel free to chime in with comments or questions. And if you're listening to our recorded version, please do subscribe and rate our podcast. We can be found on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, wherever you get your podcast. Sharing is caring. Now, Eastside fans, we've got an exciting show today. In our Real Talk segment, we're going to be diving into why the economy won't tank the housing market. And after that, we're going to be joined by our good friend Tucker Maxwell for an informative mortgage moment. We're talking about loan limits, and we're going to have some great fun. But first, we have our Real Talk segment. All right, we are talking today about why the economy is not going to sink the housing market. You may be worried that a coming recession, a lot of people have been talking about it. We did have some quarters of negative GDP, and many people are kind of revisiting that. Some fear that a spike in unemployment is going to cause a rash of foreclosures. As a matter of fact, some people are hoping something like this happens because when there's a rash of foreclosures, inventory balances and buyers are going to have better opportunities. So let's take a look at what's going on. Latest economic forecasts from the Wall Street Journal reveals that for the first time in over less than a year, less than 48% of economists believe recession will actually occur next year. That means if over half the experts no longer expect a recession within the next year, you might naturally think that some of those experts don't expect unemployment to jump. You'd be right. So this graph right here, let's go to the next slide. This graph right here will show from that survey what economists project for the unemployment rate over the next 3 years. Take a look. You've got, we're in 3.9%. So peaking in December of next year at 4.41 and then trickling down. Now, as our next graph will show that according to unemployment rates, dating back to 1948, tracking those, the red bar shows the last time the housing market crashed. In the immediate aftermath of the 2008 financial crisis, you see unemployment jump to 8.3%. The average, both bars, though, are much higher. You'll see that the historic 75-year average, 4.7%, that today we're at 3.9%. So moving forward, projections are showing that the unemployment rate is likely to stay beneath the 75-year average. And that means we're not going to see that wave of foreclosures that would severely impact the housing market. So let's see here. So what does that mean? Well, since most economists say they're not expecting a recession next year, you're probably not going to see that huge dramatic impact of foreclosures and homes hitting the market. And since we are still currently 2 months worth of inventory in most spots in both King and Snohomish and Pierce counties, which means if no new houses come in the market in 2 months, you're out of inventory, then we're going to continue to have pressure on housing. And so buyers right now have a tremendous opportunity. I had a buyer just mention to us that, hey, it's kind of cool buying a house in November because you don't have a house payment in December, which means you can spend more money on Christmas gifts. I thought, well, I'll save the money, but it was pretty funny. So, we still have time to help you get into a home this year. And this will probably be one of the last few times where it's going to be a little less competitive. Next January, February, I know our mortgage moment, Tucker is going to come and mention where we are on rates, also loan limits. We can kind of see going forward where we expect to see interest rates for the next buying season. So, all right. So that's my housing. That's my housing moment. That's my real talk segment. Next, after this short commercial break, we're going to welcome our good friend Tucker to talk about what's going on in the market. So join us after this short commercial break.
Forum Social House in downtown Bellevue is reopened for Phase 2. Enjoy our chef-cultivated menu, 369 happy hour on Fridays from 4 to 7 p.m., and of course, all the gaming your heart desires. From the interactive Topgolf Swing Suite to cutting-edge miniature golf and assorted table games, Forum Social House has something for everyone. Located at 700 Bellevue Way Northeast on the 3rd floor of Lincoln Square North, across from the cinema.
Welcome back to the podcast. I'm your host, Dan Edwards, with the Eastside Real Estate Team, and I have our good friend, Tucker Maxwell with Guild Mortgage. Welcome back to the show, Tucker.
Hey, thanks, Dan.
How was your Thanksgiving?
It was fantastic. I loved your intro there on what crazy, adventures you were doing with your leftovers, and we did a similar thing. We did a ham this year instead of a turkey. Gotcha. But we turned the leftovers into a shepherd's pie with the first layer mashed potatoes and then some stuffing and ham and put it all into a pie crust. It was fantastic.
Oof, I love it. I think we need to have kind of a new segment on this called "What are you doing with your leftovers?" No, I'm just sometimes leftovers just don't get me excited. But I don't know, something about Thanksgiving. So we've got another holiday meal coming up with Christmas. Perhaps we can kind of prep some special dishes and share that. All right. So Tucker, I am excited to hear what we are talking about today. We're actually talking about loan limits. And I thought I had my questions here. Oh, I do actually. They are over here in this place here, right here. Ooh. All right. So loan limits. Let's talk about that. There are new loan limits. What are loan limits? Why would there be loan limits? And what does that have to do with anything? Let's talk about that.
Yeah, so the loan limit guidelines really tell us what the amount of risk, overall nationwide we're willing to take on with homes. So how much debt is an acceptable amount of debt for a homeowner to take on when buying a house in our country? And with rising house prices, they've had to adjust that year after year after year to allow people to borrow more money to keep up with the rising costs of housing prices, while limiting down payment, right? That's really what it comes down to, is if we only have 3 or 5% down and we're trying to save for that, as home prices go up, it's harder to get there. And so each year they evaluate where home prices increase to. So believe it or not, even with interest rates at 23-year highs, we saw homes appreciate this year. And so they're saying, hey, we need to allow people to borrow a little bit more funds so we can continue helping people achieve home ownership.
Okay, so these change because the home values in these areas change.
Exactly. Yep. So in 2023, the conventional loan limit, the maximum you could borrow was $726,200. So $726,200 was the maximum you could borrow. So you would apply your down payment on top of that, 3 or 5% down, and then that would get us to the maximum purchase price somebody could buy with just limited funds down. They've now increased that by $40,000 to a new loan limit of $766,550. So in most counties around the country now, we can borrow $766,000 with limited funds out of pocket, 3 or 5% down, and qualify for a home. So we can now borrow that $40,000 worth of extra funds.
Okay, so 766 times 1.03. I think that's right. So yep. 788 purchase price, roughly.
Exactly.
Okay, with 3% down and kind of mixing up some stuff. Okay, great.
Yep.
So why does the loan limit vary state by state or county to county?
Because of the home prices. So here's where we throw kind of a curveball at you, is specifically the Eastside Real Estate Team serves primarily King, Pierce, and Snohomish County. Is that correct?
Yeah, mostly King and Snohomish counties. Yep. Yeah.
Exactly. So what they've looked at is the home prices in those counties are far greater than, let's pick a random county in rural Iowa, for instance. The home prices just don't track. They're not the same. And so we need to allow people to borrow more money in Snohomish County on a home than they would elsewhere, because If not, they wouldn't be able to qualify for our home prices. So
Okay.
King, Pierce, and Snohomish County, their loan limit is actually not that 766 that we just talked about. In those specific counties, they consider them high cost counties, high wage earners, high priced homes. We allow in those counties people to borrow 977,500 with a conventional home loan.
Oh,
So
wow.
nearly $1 million with 3 or 5% down.
So that's King and Snohomish counties.
King, Pierce, and Snohomish. They do include Pierce, even though
So the
Pierce,
first number you mentioned was for Washington State, or what was that?
that's the nationwide limit.
Oh, okay.
And then they go through and they pick out, Napa County, Boulder, Colorado specifically is one, King, Pierce, and Snohomish in Washington, Hawaii, Alaska, believe it or not. They pick some of these New York high cost areas and say, hey, the 766 isn't going to quite do it for them.
Now, to somebody
$1.2
that's shopping above that price, what happens then?
They go into a jumbo loan market. So then they're not dealing with conventional loan terms, not delivering those loans to Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, our typical way of delivering loans in the secondary market. Those folks would be borrowing beyond that loan limit, and which would require a jumbo loan, or them going to an institution that offers, bank products. Think of your big banking institution that says, hey, we'll take those loans. We will write you a bigger loan, but we're going to have tighter tolerances and guidelines, and we're going to make sure we're evaluating the risk appropriately.
So it's just a different risk evaluation based on income qualifications. So now who sets these limits?
Yep. So it's the Federal Housing Finance Agency. So the FHFA, they oversee the Federal Housing Administration. There's several different things, but one of their main kind of focuses is to track home prices and what the appropriate amount of risk we should take on. Think back to 2008. We wrote a bunch of bad loans. We weren't really monitoring how much risk were we taking on and delivering into the secondary market and being sold as bonds. It crashed the economy in 2008, as you just alluded to in your talk. They're saying, hey, that's too much risk. So we need to have some oversight that says, hey, this is the appropriate risk based on average wages and the economy, inflation, and so forth.
What do you think the effect on the housing market, I mean, I say impact, but effect on our market having these limits? Because I remember early on in my career, this didn't change as much as it seems to change now. Am I wrong in that? Or is it new monetary policy that they've done there?
Well, Dan, I'm much younger than you, so I don't know. In my 7 years with Guild Mortgage, every year they've made an adjustment. Okay. I don't know if that's just the last 7 years.
Maybe I just didn't pay attention to it. I don't know.
Well, and if home prices weren't climbing as fast as they have been in the recent years, that's why they've really had to do this is, home prices jumping up 20% in 2020. They had to make an adjustment, right? Or people at an average purchase price of like 1.2 million, if they kept the loan limit at 726, that's a $500,000 down payment for most buyers, and home buyers just don't have that, or most of them don't. And so they have to increase that loan limit up to get people into home ownership.
Gotcha. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Well, all right. So going forward, my Real Talk segment, I was talking about the economy, those types of things. How do you feel about, let's just say the next 6 weeks? How do you feel about the next 6 weeks as far as an opportunity for a would-be buyer right now?
I think it's massive. You alluded to this. We, as a lending industry, we believe we've reached the peak. We think we've already seen the highest rates that we're going to see. We hit those 23-year highs that we hadn't seen, in the past 23 years. And over the last 4 weeks or so, we've seen rates trickle down. And so there's a lot of buzz about that. We've seen application counts increase. We've had people come back to us and say, hey, I was only approved up to here now with the rates coming down. Can I stretch to where I wanted to get to? And so it's going to heat back up the market. So I think there's about a 6-week window where it's the holidays. It's rainy in Seattle. It's, a little bit doom and gloom. And so there's still an opportunity to keep that lower price that buyers or sellers have had to kind of relax their increases in prices with, still get seller credits and so forth. Once the spring market hits and we have more buyers in the market, you have potential multiple offer situations, it's going to start driving prices up again, and the opportunities are going to go away. So I definitely think the next month, from December 1st to January 1st presents a really great opportunity for buyers.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And, it's kind of like Black Friday was last week, right?
Yep.
And, if you're thinking about like getting a Black Friday deal, this is kind of the time of year to get a seller that is motivated.
Yep.
Like, listen, I don't want people to get the wrong impression. Like, sellers are not desperate, but they certainly are more motivated than, say, January, February, March, April, May, June, July, right? If somebody has their house on the market right now, they want to sell it, right? So why not work to negotiate a good outcome? Get some seller concessions, get a lower interest rate, because if you start to hit it when everybody else joins in January, or, I don't know, April, or even, I feel like July of next year, it's going to be hot again, because interest rates will have cooled even more by then, because we're in election year. So
exactly,
it's just kind of one of those things that smart people will look at the opportunities ahead of them, and we want our smart people here to take advantage of that. So.
Exactly. Yeah. The one thing I'll add there is right now the transactions that are taking place, they're really driven by we call them the 5 Ds.
Okay.
Divorce.
Yeah.
So you have a divorce, and the couple is having to split the assets, so they're having to sell the home in order to split up the equity. So a definite reason to sell during the holidays. Diapers, babies. I just met with a family. They have a 5-month-old. They're ready. They want to plant roots and have a single family residence for that child to grow up in. So it's motivated them to move right now. Debt. That's another one that we're seeing. Debt is approaching all-time highs right now. And so people are going to have to start making some choices and do things to control their debt levels. Next would be diamonds. So marriages. So yep. So they get married. The next step, buy a house, have a kid, right? The American dream. And then the last one, death. So, just the estate having to sell the estate. Divorce, diapers, debt, diamonds. Death.
Oh, debt. I mean, I've skipped that one.
Yeah.
4 Ds. All right. So if anybody got an engagement ring recently, that's somebody we can help too. So
exactly.
Very good. Well, thank you so much, Tucker. All right, we're going to take a really short commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to review some fun things to do this upcoming holiday season.
Are you wearing too many hats in your small business? Finding yourself wondering where the time went? Do you ever get frustrated with technology that should just work? Then you need Nerds to Go, America's small business IT department. 425-800-NERD. At Nerds to Go, we provide friendly, professional, and reasonably priced solutions for small business owners. From network troubleshooting to hardware repair or training, let Nerds to Go be your IT department. Call Nerds to Go today. We'll come to you. 425-800-NERD. That's 425-800-NERD.
All right. I left you on here, Tucker, because you may have some other ideas.
Sure.
But one of the things that I found last year was this, the Lights of Christmas, drive-through Christmas. It's kind of cool. It's up in Arlington or Warren Beach, I guess, kind of area. And you don't even have to get out of your car. You just tune your radio. Oh, those guys are dancing. That's kind of cool. You tune your radio and you get sound and lights. It's pretty darn cool. So what about you? What's one of the things you like to do, Tucker, this time of year?
Yeah. So one is the cruise, the boat cruise, the Christmas light cruise that leaves from Kirkland. So actually bought tickets to that. I'm going to do that for the first time this year. My mom's coming in from Idaho, and so she thought going on a boat would be fun. So do that Argosy Christmas light cruise. And then there's Snowflake Lane in Bellevue. The Bellevue Botanical Garden also does a Christmas light.
Every year they add more lights to that botanical gardens. Yeah.
So we have a list.
For a complete list, if you go to the Eastside Real Estate Team and search our website, we've got a blog post about some of the goings on the East Side, all the way up to Snohomish County and down to not quite Pierce. I don't think we get all the way down there, but just Google Eastside Real Estate Team and holiday to do. All right. Well, that's all the time we have for our show. Thanks for everybody watching. If you are a local business, we would love to feature you on our show. And going forward, I believe next week we're going to have our home care maintenance tips. So we'll see you next week. Everybody have a great rest of your, great rest of November. Take care.
Okay.